קדימה עין לציון צופיה עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו התקווה בת שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון ירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון ירושלים.
Thank you, Donnie. Rabbi Weinstock, the Moritz Atra of the Young Israel of Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale.
In this week's Torah reading in Parshat Shmini, read about the punishment, the death of Aaron's two sons, Nadav and Abihu. Torah tells us, "Vatetze eish lifnei Hashem, vatochal otam vayamutu lifnei Hashem," that a fire went forth before God and consumed them, and they died before Hashem. Immediately afterwards, Moshe tells Aaron, "Whenever Moshe Aaron, Hu asher diber Hashem lemor b'kravaya kadesh." Moshe says to his brother Aaron, mourning for the sudden death of his two sons, this is what God spoke when he said, b'kravaya kadesh, I will be sanctified through those who are closest to me. And before all the people, God says, through this calamity, I will be glorified. Appropriate it is that we commemorate and observe Yom HaShoah, the week during which we read these words and this parsha. For between the years 1941 and 1945, a great fire came forth and consumed many of the Jewish people, many of God's beloved. And everyone wonders why this happened, and we don't have any answers for that. But we do have the words, the prophetic, consoling words of Moses, directed to Aaron, but really directed to all of us who live in the aftermath of the Shoah, that great fire of World War II, B'kravaya Kadesh, that as a result of and in the aftermath of that great fire, that great loss, there is the possibility of God's name being sanctified. And God's presence will be glorified. No answer to the question of why. For in the aftermath of what Moshe said, the pasuk ends, "Vayidom Aaron." Aaron was silent. There's no response to tragedy if the question is why. But if we respond to the tragedy, whether it is the death of Nadav and Abihu, mitat tzadikim, the death of righteous ones, in biblical times or in the 20th century, and instead of asking the question why, which is responded to in silence, we ask the question of what now? What are the lessons in resilience, in strength, in continuing to live on richly Jewish lives? How can we go about doing that? What are the keys to our not only our survival in the aftermath of such a Shoah, but the thriving of the Jewish people? If we do that, then we create tremendous Kiddush Hashem, and God's name, the name of the Jewish people, and the name and the memories of the Kedoshim, those who perished in the Holocaust, will in fact be sanctified and glorified.
Up now is our youth dramatic presentation directed by our beloved Dr. Leonard Honig and his wife, Ellen Honig. The presentation is titled A Day at Auschwitz, From Auschwitz and After, written by Charlotte Delbo. Our cast, Ariella Greenberg, Kira Jacoby, Hadassah Reich, Rivka Reich, Emma Segi, and Molly Segi. Thank you to the participants and to the directors.
I am a survivor of Auschwitz. What was a day like there? I will tell you. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm still there. A little more each day, dying again, the death of those who died.
A day in Auschwitz is a day filled with eyes and faces, eyes that cry out, eyes full of disbelief. Each face in Auschwitz is inscribed with such precision in the blue of the sky that it remains marked there for eternity.
For eternity, these shaven heads, squeezed against one another, bursting with shouts, mouths twisted by cries we do not hear, hands waving in mute cry. The cries remain inscribed upon the blue of the sky.
A day in Auschwitz is a day of arrivals and departures. Those who arrive here are those who will be leaving, while those who left never came back. People come here with little children, but who would think you could take a train to hell? To this hell came husbands, wives, children, and their aged parents.
The guards shout, "Line up," in a language many do not understand. So the truncheon blows convey this message: children are hungry. Mothers tremble at the thought that their children might be taken away.
They look for the station's name, but it is a station that has no name. Some came from Warsaw, wearing large shawls. Others from Paris, covered by scarves. All day, all night. Every day, every night, the chimneys smoke, fed by this fuel dispatched from every part of Europe.
A young woman arrives from France not long ago. You're French?
Yes,
So am I.
from where?
Paris,
You've been here a long time?
5 weeks.
I've been here 16 days.
And you think we can survive?
We've got to try.
Maybe for us there's no hope. See the rising smoke?
We've got to keep on struggling.
How can we hope to get out of here? How will anyone ever get out of here? It would be better to throw ourselves on the barbed wire immediately.
What can one say to her? She's small, frail, and I can't even convince myself. All argument is senseless.
The chimney smokes. The sky is low. Smoke sweeps across the camp, weighing upon us and enveloping us with the odor of burning flesh.
This day in Auschwitz, some people danced. Standing, wrapped in a blanket, a child, a little boy, a face with jutting jaws. Barefoot, he jumps up and down ceaselessly with a frenzy like that of some barbaric dance. He waves his arm to keep warm.
A blanket slips open. It's a woman, a female skeleton. She is naked. Her ribs are clearly visible. She pulls the blanket up to her shoulders while continuing to dance, the dance of an automaton.
A dancing female skeleton. Her feet are small, gaunt, bare in the snow. They are living skeletons that dance.
We are waiting for days the next day. Since the middle of the night, today, we wait.
Day is breaking. We await the day. We await the end of roll call. The end of roll call is a whistle blast, which makes each of us shudder.
The whistle reminds us that here in Auschwitz, one does not live in expectation of death. One expects it.
One day after roll call, little Simone returned from the latrine all shaken. She said,
Alice's leg is over there. Come see.
Behind block 25 was the morgue where they piled the dead, waiting to be taken to the crematorium. The rats were devouring them. Lying in the snow was Alice's leg. It must have detached itself from the dead Alice. Alice had been dead for weeks, yet her artificial leg was still resting in the snow. It was covered with mud. Alice's leg in the mud.
We saw it a long time. One day, it was gone. Someone must have taken it to make a fire.
Work details were part of daily life in the camp. We saw a group of men marching in step, a capo at the head. He called out, 1, 2, 3, 4. The men found it hard to keep up.
They were wearing wooden shoes that did not stay on. We couldn't imagine how they kept walking. They had deeply circled eyes burned within their gaunt faces.
we decided to carry bread under our jackets for the men. We waited and waited for them to return. We were coming back from our work detail and heard their tread behind us. 1, 2, 3, 4.
As soon as they were beside us, we took our bread and tossed it to them. There was a mad scramble. They fought over it, snatching pieces from one another. We watched them fight and wept. The SS shouted, setting the dogs on them. The column reformed, resuming its march. 1, 2, 3, 4.
They didn't even turn their heads in our direction.
What would Auschwitz be like without beatings? A man kneels, crosses his arm, lowers his head. The capo steps forward. He has his club.
The capo raises his club, which he holds in both hands, and delivers a blow across the small of the man's back. 1, another, 2, another, 3.
It is the man himself who is counting. One can hear him between the blows. 4, 5. He is growing weaker.
6, 7. We can no longer hear him, but he is still counting. With each blow, his body sags a bit more. The count is supposed to go to 50. We cannot move. The sound of the beating is like the beating of a rug. Each blow imparts a tremor to his body. Each blow makes us jump.
The sounds of 50 blows on a man's back is interminable. If he stopped counting, the blows would start again from 0.
50 strokes of a club on a man's back is an endless number. They reverberate.
Auschwitz has a camp commandant. He lives close by, just outside the barbed wire enclosure.
A brick house with a garden graced by a lawn, rose bushes and multicolored begonias. Between the hedge of rose bushes and the barbed wire lies a path to the crematoria.
It is the path taken by the stretchers transporting the dead. They go all day, the whole day. The smokestack spouts its fumes the whole day long.
The passing hours shift the smokestack's shadow upon the garden walks. and the bright green lawn.
The commandant's sons play in the garden. They play horses, ball, or else they play commandant and prisoner.
Auschwitz also had an orchestra. The conductor was a celebrity in Vienna. All the players were fine musicians who had packed their instruments when being deported. They owed their stay of execution to music.
The commandant loved music. When he ordered a special concert for his own pleasure, he had an extra ration of bread distributed to the players.
And when the new arrivals stepped out of the boxcars to proceed to the gas chamber, the commandant loved it to be to the rhythm of a merry march. Later, they played waltzes. To hear them was intolerable.
Besides hunger, there is thirst. There is the thirst of the morning and the thirst of the evening, the thirst of the day and the thirst of the night.
Since morning, I can think of nothing else but drinking. When the midday soup is dished out, it is salty, so salty that it strips off the mouth's skin, causing burning sores.
Eat, you've got to eat. So many died already because they stopped eating.
Try, it is quite liquid today. No, it's salty. I spit out the spoonful I tried swallowing. Nothing goes down if you have no saliva in your mouth.
Wintertime in Auschwitz. The snow sparkles in the refracted light.
The sky is blue, hard and glacial.
We are frozen in a block of hard cutting ice, transparent like a block of pure crystal.
And this crystal is pierced by light, as if the light were frozen in the ice, as though the ice were light.
It takes a long time to be able to realize we are able to move within the block of ice that encloses us.
We wiggle out toes, stamp our feet.
15,000 prisoners stamp their feet, yet no noise is heard.
The silence is solidified into cold. We are in a place where time is abolished.
In Auschwitz, we do not know whether we exist. Only ice, light, dazzling snow, and us in the ice, this light, this silence.
Night. We lie in crowded bunks, listening to the pounding of our heart, wondering whether it has the strength to beat much longer.
Longer is counted in days because our hearts are unable to count weeks or months. We count day by day, and each day is measured by 1,000 deaths, 1,000 eternities.
Here in Auschwitz, it seems like an eternity exists between day and night. When the morning whistle blows, one nightmare ends, another begins.
Night never really ends here. It is not the end of night for those who are delirious.
It is not the end of night for rats devouring lips still alive.
It is not the end of night for stars frozen in a frozen sky.
It is not the end of night, only the end of 1,000 nights and 1,000 nightmares.
There is a landscape in Auschwitz. It is hard sometimes to see it due to the snow and mud. It is a human landscape. The yard is full of them.
The bodies are naked, stacked side by side. White, a bluish white against the snow. Heads shaved, the corpses frozen, amidst the sunlight on the asphalt.
The people lying there are yesterday's companions. Yesterday, they signed up for roll call. They were setting out to work. Yesterday, they were hungry.
They were lice infested. Yesterday, they were beaten. Yesterday, they suffered. Yesterday, they wished to die.
Now they are there, nude corpses in the snow. This is the landscape of Auschwitz.
My memory is more bloodless than an autumn leaf. My memory has forgotten the dew. My memory is drained of its sap. My memory has bled to death. This is when the heart ought to stop beating, come to a stop.
We remember Yvonne Picard, who had such a lovely face. She died.
Sarah Blech, who had almond-shaped eyes and eloquent hands, died.
Michelle died, who had such a lovely complexion, a full mouth, a silvery laugh.
Esther, who had mauve-colored eyes, died.
So much beauty and youth, so much promise.
And Yvette also died, who was neither pretty nor anything special, yet braver than anyone.
And you, Leah, and I, Charlotte, have nothing lovely left.
We have survived Auschwitz, and here are some of our thoughts. I fought against injustice. It gripped me, handed me over to death. I fought against death, fiercely, so fiercely that it could not whisk me away from life.
A child gave me a flower one morning, a flower picked for me. He kissed the flower before giving it to me and asked me for a kiss.
This boy, the color of licorice, who smiled at me in Italy. There is no wound that will not heal, I told myself that day, and still repeat it from time to time, enough to believe it.
Oh, you who know, did you know that hunger makes your eyes sparkle while thirst makes them dim?
Oh, you who know, did you know that you can see your mother dead without shedding a tear?
Oh, you who know, did you know that in the morning you prayed death, only to fear it by evening?
Oh, you who know, did you know a minute is longer than a lifetime, a day longer than a year?
Oh, you who know, did you know that legs are more vulnerable than eyes? Nerves harder than bones? The heart firmer than steel?
Did you know that the stones of the road do not weep? That there is one word only for dread, one for anguish?
Did you know that suffering is limitless, that horror cannot be circumscribed?
Did you know this, you who know?
According to my observations of camp survivors, there are two categories: those who came out and those who are still there. I am still there.
Auschwitz is so deeply etched in my memory that I cannot forget one moment of it. Auschwitz is there, unalterable, precise, but enveloped in the skin of memory. Unlike the snake skin, the skin of memory does not renew itself.
We have told you our stories about a day in Auschwitz and leave you with a message of hope. It was found on a cellar wall in Cologne, Germany, written by an unknown Jew during the Holocaust.
I believe in the sun, even when it is not shining. And I believe in love, even when there's no one there. And I believe in God, even when he is silent.
I believe through any trial, there is always a way. But sometimes in this suffering and hopeless despair, my heart cries for shelter, to know someone's there. But a voice rises within me, saying, hold on, my child. I'll give you strength. I'll give you hope. Just stay a little while.
I believe in the sun, even when it is not shining. And I believe in love, even when there's no one there. But I believe in God, even when he is silent. I believe through any trial, there is always a way.
May there someday be sunshine. May there someday be happiness. May there someday be love. May there someday be peace.
Good night. The end.
Ani maamin, ani maamin, ani maamin, באמונה שלמה, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין, באמונה שלמה, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין. אני מאמין, אני מאמין באמונה שלמה בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין.
Thank you, Donnie. It is now my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Anita Karl. She is one of the youngest survivors of the Holocaust living in Miami. And we're about to hear her amazing story of survival. I just have to tell you, after speaking with her a couple of times to arrange this, hi, Anita. She is one of the most busy people I have ever met in my life. She literally just finished speaking in Lima, Peru. And 5 minutes later, she's here in Hollywood, Florida. And yesterday in Nova, and it just goes on and on. So God bless you, keep you healthy, so you can share your story with as many people as you possibly can.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I am happy to be here, a little bit stressed, but otherwise in good health, Baruch Hashem. The story of my life is a story of survival, of a very strong woman who refused to be a bystander, and with her will and power was able to save 3 little girls, my 2 sisters and myself, from the horrors of the Holocaust, from the blackest time on the history of humanity. I was born in Lviv in Poland on the 26th of May in 1938. In 1941, the Nazis invaded our city. Our city was a very beautiful city, and I belonged to a very Orthodox, patriarchal family. It was a very large family. My mother, Anita Karl, was the youngest of 10, 5 brothers and 5 sisters. My father was one of 6 brothers. All were married, all had at least 3 children. The eldest brother of my father lived in Vienna and was a doctor and practiced medicine. He was a bachelor, and he came to visit often, especially for the high holidays. My grandparents, my grandmother on my mother's side was a businesswoman. They had a factory and they manufactured baby carriages. They were well established, and our family, well over 100 people, would get together and celebrate holidays, be happy, and just like here in Miami, where big families live together in a joyful manner. In 1941, the Germans invaded our city. They came with their deshumanization for the Jewish people, with the Nuremberg laws, which forbade all the Jews from having a job, from studying, from going to school, from learning, or simply living in peace. We were given a yellow Star of David to wear, and we were also given 3 days to move into the ghetto. They came to our house, they looted everything, they took away all the things that were of value, and they treated us as inhumanly as possible. They gave us 3 days to move to the ghetto. The ghetto was a shabby part of the city. It was run down and in a very bad condition. They surrounded it with barbed wire. They policed it day and night with the enormous German shepherds who were trained to kill. And they killed also right and left without any compassion, without any thought about killing and about taking away precious lives of our brothers and sisters. Near the ghetto, they established a concentration camp called Janowska. This was a forced labor camp. It was a slave workers camp for people that did not get food enough, they did not get any care. Many died of hunger, many died of illnesses, and many were overworked simply to death. Life in the ghetto was horrible. And just to think about it and to remember, it pains me so much. I remember as a little girl of 3 years old, standing in line to get my rations every day. The ration consisted of a cup of water and a small piece of stale black bread, which I ate crumb by crumb, so it would last me 24 hours. They were cruel and they were terrible to us. I remember one day playing with my little cousin, and we were in the dirt and hungry and scared. And the German came by and he took out a bar of chocolate. He showed us the bar of chocolate and said, "Who wants this piece of chocolate?" We opened our eyes wide, got up and ran to him. But my little cousin was faster than I was. He picked her up. He gave her the bar of chocolate with one hand, and with the other hand, he took out his revolver and shot her in the head. Such inhumanity. He simply walked away, not caring for a life, not caring for what was happening to us. Where was his humanity? How can a human being behave in such a way? The ghetto truly was a place where it was easier to die than to live. What we endured was unimaginable, and just to survive was an accomplishment. But survive with our sanity intact was nothing short of a miracle. After almost 2 years of this living, and many people had already died, but the population in the ghetto grew quite a bit because they brought in Jews from all over the small villages, the towns, the shtetls, and the population of the ghetto grew to 150,000 people. From those 152,000 in the Lviv ghetto, only 200 survived, and I am one of them. Soon they were going to close the ghetto because of the influx in the population, and they decided to transfer in the cattle carts on a train 100 people packed shoulder to shoulder in each train to this despicable concentration camps for the final solution. They did not want the children to go with them. The trip was long and the children could not stand such a terrible trip. So the decision was made to murder all the children younger than 12. When my mother and father heard that this would be happening, they refused to accept it. And my mother stood up and said, I will not allow my children to be murdered in front of my eyes. And so one day she took some jewelry that she had hidden and her sisters had hidden from the Nazis. She sewed them in her underwear. She took the Star of David out of our clothes, and bravely, she also took with her a vial of poison in case her idea, her plan would fail. She said goodbye to my father, promising to bring him out if at all possible, if we were successful in our escape, and walked out of the ghetto the next day with the three of us to the train station in Lvov and boarded the first train that was on its way to the south of Poland. She sat next to a woman, and the trip was long. She had no documents, she had no papers, and at one moment, she established a conversation with this woman who was sitting next to her and told her to watch the girls, that she would go to the ladies' room. When she came back, she shuffled her bundles and her things and began to scream, where is my purse? What happened to my purse? The woman told her to calm down, that somebody must have stolen her purse, but she would, if the German would come to ask for papers, she would be a witness to the fact that the purse was stolen. Of course, my mother had no purse, but she was smart, and in the terrible situation, she reacted in the proper way. And sure enough, when the conductor came and asked for papers and train tickets, she was able to have a witness that said that her things were stolen. And so we were left to travel to the south of Poland and disembarked in a little town called Buchach. We passed ourselves as Catholics, and my life as a Catholic girl began. We went to the police station, and my mother was interrogated. And then the Nazi brought out a Bible. And on the Bible, she put her right hand, and swore that to the third generation, there was not one drop of Jewish blood in our veins. And so we got the papers as Catholic people. She rented a little room in a house, and we went to church, and my life as a Catholic girl began. Every Sunday, for me, it was like a holiday. I went to church. At the beginning, we sat in the last row. We knelt when the people in front of us knelt. We made the sign of the cross when they did. And we also moved our lips to show that we were praying. That was the beginning. But soon I developed such love and caring for these ceremonies that I graduated to the first row. And I even helped the priest with the mass. Sunday was my special day. Sunday, I had more food. Sunday, I went to church. Sunday, I got to wear my one and only white dress and my one and only pair of shoes. So it felt good. We were quiet, but around me, I saw terrible, terrible terrors of people being found in hiding, Jews murdered one after the other. What they did with us is unimaginable. They used our hair to do mattresses. They used our skin to make lampshades. They use our bodies for fertilizer after they were burned in the crematoriums. From all my beautiful family, no one survived. Everybody was murdered in terrible ways, being in the gas cameras and later burned in the crematoriums, or shot to death, or even found out while they were hiding, like my father, whom my mother was able to bring out of the ghetto, smuggle him out with the last of her jewelry. He was hiding in a closet in our room during the day, and only at night, when the children were asleep, he was able to come out. Once I was very, very sick with anginas. We had no penicillin. And he came out and hugged me and took off his scarf and put it around my neck. The next morning, I asked my mother, who was this man who was so wonderful to me all night long and held me in his arms? And she said to me, no, there was no one. You were delirious. We were not used to arguing with our mother, for with one look, we knew if we should sing or be quiet or talk or not. And so they found my father and they took him to the forest. They made him dig his grave and then they shot him. I do not know where he lies, and I can never go and bring a flower to his tomb. They deprived me of knowing how to grow up amongst uncles and aunts and cousins. They deprived me of my father and of a way of life that I was getting accustomed to. The war was coming to an end and the Russians were coming. The Germans started to retreat. And finally, the Russians liberated us. We had, in the meantime, gone with the Germans. They forced us on the long marches. All the civil population had to leave the town in order not to give the Russians any help or aid. And we walked for many, many miles under rain and snow, and bombs were falling all around us. The Allied forces were coming finally. And so we arrived into Germany in the end. In Germany, we were told were the Americans, and with the Americans came many Jewish organizations to help finally the survivors, to give us shelters, to give us food and medicine. We became the DP people, the dispersed people. And we looked for shelter and help from the Americans. My mother, after she told her story, was named and honored as a survivor. Very few parents or mothers or fathers that survived kept all their children with them. Most of them gave them away to a neighbor, to a nunnery, or maybe to a convent in order to allow the 3 or 4 children to survive. They thought the chances were better, and they certainly were, to be individuals and not a family. And so in Krakow, in Berlin also came the Red Cross, and they put lists of people who had survived and were looking for relatives. Meanwhile, my father's eldest brother, the doctor in Vienna, in 1938 was told that he no longer was allowed to practice medicine because he was a Jew. And so he started asking for visas to emigrate to any country that he knew about. But the United States refused, Canada refused, England refused, even South Africa and Australia refused. But a country in South America called Peru accepted him, and he alone, he was a bachelor with 1 suitcase, left Vienna forever. He said, if they don't want me here, I will leave. And arrived in Peru, established himself as a doctor again, became quite famous, even as high as being the doctor to the president of the republic and his family. So after the war, when he, through the Red Cross, was able to find us, Peru would not accept Holocaust survivors. In order to immigrate to Peru, one had to be a Catholic. Those were their laws. But he went to the president and he told him that it was his sister-in-law and his 3 nieces, and he needed visas for us. And so, of course, he got 4 visas for us, and we made our way to Lima, to Peru. In the meantime, very gently, while we were in Berlin, my mother told us that we were not Catholic, that we were Jews. Immediately I refused, I rebelled. I said, no, the Jews get killed. I don't want to be killed. I want to live. Why should I be Jewish? But my mother, with her wisdom and patience, explained to me who we are, talked to me about our history and our roots. And slowly I learned the Jewish prayer to go to sleep without having to kneel and say the Pater Nostrum. The only thing I refused is when she, in December, told me that we cannot have a Christmas tree. But then I said, I have to have my Christmas tree. I cannot live without my Christmas tree. And so my mother said, all right, I will bring you your last Christmas tree, but you have to promise that you will never again have a Christmas tree because we have Hanukkah. And she told me about Hanukkah. And so I promised, and through the years, I have always kept my promise. But if a neighbor or a friend is dressing up the Christmas tree, I always offer to help. The time went by, we arrived in Peru. I went to school in Peru. I learned English and I learned Spanish. Today I speak 9 languages. I got married later on. I have 2 beautiful children, Michelle and Sammy, and they gave me each 3 grandchildren. I am blessed with seeing my grandchildren grow up and become professionals, and in a way, what we achieved, because in the end, we won. We were never defeated. We were strong and we persevered under the worst of circumstances. I comprehended the magnitude, monstrosity, and evil of the crimes committed against us. And how could the world stand by and do nothing? Now, when I look at the sweet faces of my children and grandchildren, I know that we not only survived, but we won against the evil that reigned on us. Our people, the lives of my people will continue into infinity. I wish with all my heart that the Holocaust will never be forgotten. We must look into our past so we will have a peaceful future. Today, crimes still linger and live amongst us. I hope that someday we will be free of bigotry, persecutions, and racism. And the new generations will never allow the horrors of the Holocaust to happen again. Thank you very much.
Anita, thank you for sharing your story. You are a brave, beautiful, and articulate woman. And we are so privileged to have been in your audience this evening. And I think we will all be a little more appreciative and resilient and maybe a little less spoiled as a result of your story. Thank you so much for sharing.
You are very welcome. If there are any questions, please go ahead. And time.
I don't know. I think if we were live, questions might be a little easier, but we have a lot of people on Zoom and I'm not really sure how to navigate it. But maybe what I can do is I can take the questions and maybe I'll send them to you and we can do it that way, maybe via email or something. I think that might work out a little.
Good,
is that okay?
good.
Is that a good idea?
I thank you all very much and know how blessed you all are. And be well and go into the future remembering the past. And remember the Holocaust and never, never allow it to happen again. Thank you again and good night.
Okay, good night.
And always go with roads filled with milk and honey.
Amen. Amen. And we wish you health.
Thank you.
I'd like to now call upon Susu Danis, who's going to lead the candle lighting in memory of the 6 million.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Anita.
You're very welcome.
We gather virtually again to honor the loved ones lost to our young Israel families. Gabriel Deutsch, David Deutsch's father. Baruch Epstein, Zahara Epstein's husband. Yitzhak Gutman, Sarah Wallerstein's father. David Kastner, Sharon Clemens' father. Solomon Mitzner, Sandy Goldglanz's father. Edith and Joseph Roth, Ellen Honig's parents. Ezriel and Paula Honig, Lenny Honig's parents. Aaron Jacoby and his sister, Gloria Grossman, Steve Jacoby's father and aunt. Albert and Doris Zinn, Ed Zinn's parents. Shmuel and Charna Goldberger, David Goldberger's parents. Joe Rubenfeld, Carol Berkson Weinstein's father and Kobe Berkson's grandfather. Sonia Riegel and Yechiel Ephraim Kanar and Chaim Kanar, Nora Teltzer's parents and brother. Yehudit Bat David, David Abrams' grandmother. Yitzhak Silberberg, my father, and Max Dennis's grandfather. It is through the memories of the loved ones just named that the stories will be retold to future generations. Their neshamas will have an aliyah, and by which Hashem should protect us and future generations so that never again is truly never again. Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you, Susu. And before we wrap up this evening with Donnie Bengio doing the Kalmaleh, I just have a service announcement. If everyone would check their emails for a video with pieces of different testimonies by survivors from within our midst. It's also available on the Shul YouTube channel. It was really well done and very inspiring. And at this point, I also, because I was in a rush to introduce the keynote speaker, I did not thank Lenny and Ellen for once again directing and putting their heart and soul into the youth performance. I'd like to thank them again, and I'd like to thank the girls in the cast, Ariella, Kira, Hadassah, Rivka, Emma, and Molly. So thank you to everybody.
Aquí no me estoy tapando la cara, ahí sí.
The Soroto vote, good news to everybody. And Donnie, Kelma Le Rachamim, and after that, good evening.
אל מלא רחמים, שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, על כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים טהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמותיהם של 600 רבבות אלפי ישראל, אנשים ונשים, ילדים וילדות שנהרגו ונשחטו ונשרפו ונטבחו ונחנקו ונקברו חיים בידי הצוררים, כולם קדושים וטהורים, ובהם גאונים וצדיקים, ארזי הלבנון ואדירי התורה, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם, בעל הרחמים יצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתם, אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבותם, ונאמר אמן.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Lisa. It was beautiful. Good night.
Very much. What a really excellent program. Thank you. Good job.